Another man called her beautiful. The Mafia boss stole her heart with one kiss. Nadia was already late, and she did not care. She stood in a gas station bathroom at 11 o'clock at night, reapplying lipstick she had no energy for, staring at a face in the mirror that looked like it belonged to someone else, someone tired, someone who had been tired for so long she had stopped noticing it, the way people stop noticing the hum of a refrigerator until the power goes out. The light above her was flickering, one of those yellow, unsteady lights that makes everyone look slightly sick. She capped the lipstick, dropped it into her purse, and told herself she was fine. She had been telling herself that for 3 years. Outside, in the parking lot, Daniel was waiting in the car with the engine running. He had honked twice already. She knew this because she had heard it and chosen to stay inside for one more minute, pressing her palms against the cold edge of the sink, breathing slowly, preparing herself the way a person prepares before walking into something they know is going to drain them. The party was for Daniel's cousin, an engagement celebration at a rented venue downtown, full of people she had met enough times to recognize but not enough times to like. She would stand beside Daniel all night, laugh at the right moments, eat food from small plates, and leave feeling no different from when she arrived. This was her life. She had built it carefully. It was stable and quiet, and completely hollow. Daniel honked a third time. She walked out. The venue was loud in the way that rented event spaces always are, all hard floors and high ceilings that bounce sound back at you, until conversation becomes noise, and noise becomes just something you learn to shout over. There were round tables covered in white cloth, candles in tall glass holders, and a bar in the corner doing serious business. Nadia stayed close to Daniel for the first hour, because that was the arrangement, unspoken but understood. She smiled when he introduced her. She said the right things. She accepted a glass of something sparkling and barely touched it. Daniel was not a bad man. This was the part that made everything harder. He was responsible and consistent and completely predictable, and he had never once in 3 years done anything that could be pointed to as wrong. He paid his bills. He remembered her dentist appointments. He called his mother every Sunday. He had just never, not once, looked at her like she was something worth looking at. She had stopped waiting for it sometime around month 14. By month 20 she had stopped missing the waiting. By year 3 she had almost convinced herself that this was what maturity looked like. That warmth was a young person's need, and she was past it. She was 27 years old, and she had almost convinced herself she was past warmth. At some point during the second hour, Daniel got pulled into a conversation with his uncle about something involving property taxes, and Nadia drifted toward the edge of the room, the way she always drifted at parties, quietly, without drama, finding a patch of wall to stand near and observe from. She was watching the dance floor when it happened. She was not doing anything remarkable. She was simply standing there, holding her barely touched glass, wearing a dark blue dress she had bought on sale 6 months ago, and never had occasion to wear. Her hair was down. Her shoes were hurting her feet. She was thinking about nothing in particular. A man she had never seen before turned away from a conversation mid-sentence, looked across the room, and found her. Just like that. The moment lasted less than a second. She registered it, and then looked away. The way you do when you catch someone's eye by accident. She studied the dancers. She counted the candles on the nearest table. She looked at the bar. She felt him walking toward her before she saw it. He stopped beside her. Not too close. Just close enough for conversation. He had a glass of water, she noticed. Not sparkling water with fruit in it. Not something with a label. Plain water, like a person who had no need to perform relaxation because he was actually relaxed. He was tall. She registered that. She also registered the way the room around him seemed to continue normally, which meant he was not someone who caused scenes or demanded attention. He simply occupied space the way certain people do, with a completeness that makes you wonder what the room felt like before they were in it. He said nothing for a moment. Then he said it. "You're beautiful." Not a line. Not the opening move in a game she had seen played 100 times. He said it the way a person says something true, plainly, without decoration. The way you'd say the weather was cold or the music was too loud. Nadia looked at him. He was looking back at her with an expression she could not immediately name. Something steady and direct, not aggressive, not performative. Just clear. I'm sorry, she said. Not an apology, really. More of a reflex. Don't be, he said. I just thought someone should tell you. She did not know what to do with that. 3 years of a man who was kind and responsible and blind to her, and here was a stranger at a party stating her worth, like a fact he was mildly surprised no one had mentioned recently. She almost laughed, not at him, at herself. I'm Nadia, she said. Remy, he said. They shook hands. His grip was firm but not forceful, the kind that does not need to prove anything. He did not ask what she did for work. He did not launch into the usual inventory of getting-to-know-you questions that people use at parties to fill silence without actually making contact. He simply asked her what she thought of the party, and when she said it was fine, he said he thought it was extremely loud, and he was mainly there because he owed someone a favor. She laughed. A real one. They talked for 22 minutes, she counted. After. Not during. During. She was just talking, which was something she had not been just doing for longer than she could accurately remember. He asked her things that caught her off guard. Not personal things, not probing things, just unexpectedly real things, like whether she thought people were generally honest with themselves, and what she did when she felt stuck. She answered carefully at first, then less carefully, and by the end she was saying things she had not said out loud to anyone in months. Daniel appeared at her elbow at the 22-minute mark. He looked at Remy. Remy looked at him. Something passed between them that was not hostility, but was not warmth either. Just two men registering each other's presence and making quiet, rapid calculations. There you are, Daniel said to Nadia. My aunt wants to meet you. Nadia nodded. She turned to Remy. It was good to meet you, she said. You too, he said. He was already looking at her the same way he had the whole time. Nothing changed in his face when Daniel appeared. Nothing performed. Nothing retracted. Just steady. She followed Daniel across the room. She met the aunt. She said the right things. She spent another hour at the party, and then rode home in the car, while Daniel talked about the conversation with his uncle and the property tax implications of something she stopped tracking around the third traffic light. She stared out the window. She went home. She brushed her teeth. She lay down in the dark and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the word he had said. The plain, simple, devastating word. Beautiful. Not in the context of a night or an outfit, or a specific angle and specific lighting. Not conditionally, just stated. Present tense. As if it were simply the case. She lay there in the dark beside Daniel, who was already asleep, breathing steadily, and she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt it, and did not know what to do with it. So she held it quietly in the dark, like something she had found, and was not yet sure she was allowed to keep. She did not sleep for a long time. When she finally did, she dreamed about something she could not remember in the morning, but she woke up with the feeling it had left behind, the specific feeling of having been seen. It sat with her all through breakfast, all through the drive to work, all through the morning, quiet and persistent, like a song you cannot stop hearing long after it has ended. She told herself it would pass. She had been telling herself things for 3 years. Remy found her again on a Tuesday. She was leaving the dry cleaner on Halford Street, arms full of plastic-wrapped clothes, keys clenched in her teeth because she had run out of hands, and she walked directly into someone standing on the pavement outside the door. The clothes went sideways. The keys hit the ground. She said something undignified into the plastic wrap. Here, a voice said. She pushed the clothes back enough to see. He was crouching down, picking up her keys from the pavement, looking up at her with the same expression she remembered. Steady, slightly amused, not trying to be. You, she said. Me, he agreed, and handed her the keys. She stood there for a moment, rebalancing the dry cleaning, trying to locate a thought. Do you live near here? No, he said. She waited for more. He did not offer more. Then what are you doing on Halford Street? She asked. He looked at her. I was told you use this cleaner. The honesty of it disarmed her completely. Not a clever line, not a softened version of the truth. Just the truth, plain as water, offered without apology. She should have found it strange. She should have felt the edges of it, and decided what they meant. Later, she would understand that this was the moment, the exact moment, when the story she was living could have gone differently. If she had been more careful, or less lonely, or if the dream feeling from the party had already faded by then. It had not faded. "There's a coffee shop around the corner," she said instead. He nodded once, like this was the most reasonable thing he had heard all day, and took half her dry cleaning from her arms without asking, and walked beside her to the corner. That was how it started. Not a grand beginning. Not fireworks or a skyline or a speech. A Tuesday afternoon, dry cleaning, keys on the pavement. Coffee became dinner by the end of the first week. Dinner became 3 evenings by the end of the second. By the third week, she was aware that something was shifting in her life at a speed she was not entirely managing, and she was also aware that she did not want it to slow down. She still had not told Daniel. This was the part she did not examine too carefully. She went home each night to the apartment she shared with him, and she said she had been working late, or out with a friend. And Daniel said okay and did not ask further because Daniel had never, in 3 years, asked further, and she had once been grateful for that, and now it felt like its own kind of answer. Remy was different in ways she catalogued without meaning to. He listened the way that felt almost uncomfortable at first, fully and without interruption, like what she was saying was the only thing in the room. He remembered small things. The name of the colleague who had frustrated her the week before, the coffee order she had changed her mind about, the fact that her sister's birthday was coming and she was stressed about finding a gift. He did not make a production of remembering. He simply had not forgotten. He made her laugh in a way she had almost forgotten was available to her. Not performance, not trying to be funny. More like the world was genuinely absurd to him, and he could not help noticing it out loud. She began to understand, in these weeks, how much of herself she had been leaving in storage. But Remy had edges she could not see around. The first time she noticed the car, she told herself it was a coincidence. A dark car parked across from the restaurant, a man in the front seat reading nothing, looking at nothing, just present. The second time, she said nothing but she looked at Remy, and he met her eyes, and something in his expression told her he had seen her notice. He did not explain. There were phone calls. Not frequent, but certain ones made him stand, place his napkin carefully on the table, and walk outside without comment. He was never gone long. He always came back. But the way he came back, perfectly composed, face reset to calm, told her that whatever had happened outside required composing. She was not naive. She had grown up in a city that had its layers. She knew that certain kinds of ease, the kind Remy wore like it had always fit him, did not come from ordinary places. She simply did not ask. Not yet. What she did instead was pay attention to what she could see. And what she could see was a man who showed up when he said he would, who never spoke poorly of people who were not in the room, who once spent 40 minutes helping an elderly woman on the street corner figure out the bus route to a hospital, without once looking impatient, who read real books with real opinions about them, who was kind in the private, consistent, unwitnessed ways that are the only kind that mean anything. She also noticed the way rooms changed when he entered them. She noticed it at the restaurant on Clement Street one evening, the way the maitre d' moved differently when he saw Remy, not afraid, but aware, careful in a specific direction, like adjusting your posture in the presence of something that could matter. She noticed it and she filed it away, and she went back to her pasta, and they talked about whether city parks should be free or funded, and she laughed 3 times, and none of it stopped being real, just because something else was also true underneath it. She Googled his last name on a Wednesday night while Daniel was in the shower. Marchetti. The search returned nothing that should have been there for a man like him. No LinkedIn profile, no news mentions, no digital footprint of the size that a man of his evident resources should have been leaving. There was a Remy Marchetti who had won a regional chess tournament in 2003. That was it. Nothing, which was, she sat with the phone in her hands and understood, its own kind of answer. She put the phone down. She heard the shower turn off. She thought about saying nothing. She thought about the Tuesday on Halford Street, and the dry cleaning, and the coffee around the corner, and the 22 minutes at a party where someone had talked to her like she was a full person. She decided she was going to ask him directly, not because she expected the full answer, because she needed to know what kind of person he was when the question was put plainly. The kind with no prices on the menu and a man playing quiet piano in the corner. Remy had ordered without consulting the menu. The waiter had not offered him one. She watched this and set her fork down. "I googled your name," she said. He looked at her. "Nothing came up," she said. "Not what I expected." He held her gaze and said nothing. "Who are you?" she asked. Not accusatory, just clear. The same directness he had used with her from the beginning, she gave it back to him now. He was quiet for a moment. The piano played something she did not recognize. "Someone who does what is necessary," he said, "in situations where other people cannot." She waited. He looked at her with an expression she could not fully read, something between honesty and restraint, like a man choosing how much of a window to open. "Does it change what you feel?" he asked. It was a real question, not a deflection. He actually wanted to know. She sat with it. She thought about the Tuesday, the coffee, the 3 weeks, the way he said her name like it meant the thing it was supposed to mean. She thought about the dark car across from the restaurant, and the phone calls, and the name that returned nothing. She hated that none of it changed what she felt. She hated it, and she was also, underneath the hating, something she could not immediately name. She picked her fork back up. "Ask me again in a month," she said. He nodded once, like this was the most reasonable thing. And they finished dinner, and the piano played, and outside the dark car was parked across the street in the rain. She did not look at it on the way out. She was not ready to look at it yet, but she knew it was there, and she knew that knowing it was there and choosing to keep walking was its own decision, even if she had not fully named it. She kept walking. Daniel found out on a Sunday. Not because she told him. She had been building toward that, the telling, had been carrying it around for days like something heavy she needed to set down somewhere specific, waiting for the right moment, the right words, the version of the conversation that would be honest without being cruel. She did not get to choose the moment. He found a photograph on her phone. She had left it on the kitchen counter charging, and he was not a man who snooped, had never been, and she believed this, which was why she had not thought to be more careful. He had picked it up to check the time, and the screen had been open, and there was a photograph of her and Remy at the restaurant on Clement Street, taken by a passing waiter who had offered, and she had said yes without thinking about what saying yes meant. In the photograph she was laughing, not a polite laugh, a real one, head tilted, eyes bright, the kind of expression that cannot be faked and cannot be explained away. Daniel had seen it. By the time she came out of the bedroom that morning, he was standing in the kitchen, with the phone face down on the counter and his hands flat on the surface, and the way he was standing told her everything before either of them said a word. They talked for 2 hours. It was not a screaming fight. Daniel was not a man who screamed. It was worse than screaming. It was quiet and precise and careful. Two people who had been careful with each other for 3 years, being careful one last time about the ending. He said things that were fair. He also said one thing that was not fair but was true. "You were always too much for me to deal with." He did not say it to hurt her. She understood this. He said it because it was accurate, his honest accounting of the gap between who she was and who he had been able to show up for. He was telling the truth in the same flat way he had always operated, responsibly, without decoration. It landed anyway. It landed in a specific place, the place where she had spent 3 years trying to be smaller, quieter, lower maintenance, easier, and she felt it there like a weight dropping. She did not cry while he was in the room. He packed a bag. Not all of his things, just enough. He was going to stay with his cousin, he said. They would talk about the rest of the apartment later. He was reasonable about it. He was reasonable about everything, right up until he closed the door behind him. She stood in the kitchen. The apartment was very quiet. She sat down on the kitchen floor, which was something she had never done before, and she let the quiet press in around her, and she stayed there until the floor was cold through her clothes. She was not crying about Remy. She needed to understand that clearly. She was crying about 3 years, about the version of herself she had put in storage, and the part of her that had not noticed she was doing it. She was crying about what it meant, that the first person to look at her properly in 3 years had been a stranger at a party, who she had known for less than a month, who had secrets filed under nothing searchable, who had answered her most important question with a question of his own. She was crying about the photograph on the counter, and the fact that in it she looked like herself, and she had not looked like herself in a very long time. After a while, she stopped. She got up off the floor. She washed her face. She stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the street below and the Sunday afternoon, moving along normally out there. People walking dogs, a child on a bicycle, a couple sharing one umbrella over a coffee they were passing back and forth. Her phone was on the counter. She did not call Remy. She was not ready to call Remy. There was a space between Daniel leaving and whatever came next that she needed to exist in alone for a moment, to feel the shape of it. She ordered food she did not eat. She watched something on her laptop she did not follow. She called her sister and talked for 40 minutes about nothing important, the kind of call that is really just about hearing someone's voice. She went to bed. She lay in the apartment that was now her apartment, in the bed that was now her bed, in the life that was now fully hers to account for, and she stared at the ceiling. Outside on the street, a car she had not expected passed slowly and was gone. She did not see it, but it had been there. Remy had not called. He would not. She was beginning to understand, until she called first. He was not a man who pushed. He had stated what he felt the first night he saw her, and everything since had been offered and never demanded. She had noticed this, and she had not fully appreciated it until now. The difference between a man who takes up space in your life without permission and a man who waits to be invited. She fell asleep thinking about that. She woke up thinking about what she was going to say. She called him in the morning. He answered on the second ring. She did not do a long explanation. She said, "He found out. He's gone. I'm okay." There was a brief quiet. "I'll pick you up at 7, Remy said. "If you want." She said yes. She showered and dressed with more care than the situation probably required, and she stood at her window at 6:55 and watched his car pull up to the curb below. She took her keys, her bag, and whatever was left of the version of herself she had been maintaining for the last 3 years, and she put that version down gently in the kitchen, like setting something heavy on a shelf, and she went downstairs to meet whatever came next. He was standing outside the car. He did not look like a man who needed to perform concern. He just looked at her the way he always looked at her, like she was the thing in the room worth looking at, and said nothing. She stopped in front of him. There was the street, and the Monday morning, and the cold moving through her coat, and there was also this man, who she had known for less than 2 months, and could not fully explain, and could not stop thinking about. She thought about what Daniel had said, about being too much. She looked at Remy standing there in the cold, looking back at her, like too much was not a concept that applied to her, like too much was not even something he was processing. "I'm a mess," she said. "I know," he said. "Get in the car." She got in the car. They drove. Not to dinner, not somewhere planned. Just drove through the Monday morning city while she looked out the window and felt the shape of what had changed, and he drove without asking her to talk until she was ready to. When she started talking, she talked for almost an hour, about Daniel, about the 3 years, about the storage she had put herself into, and the photograph on the counter, and the floor of the kitchen. He listened, the way he always listened, like it was the only thing in the room. When she finished, it was quiet for a moment. "You weren't too much," he said. "You were with someone who didn't have enough." She looked at him. She thought about the difference between those two things and how long she had been operating like they were the same thing. The city moved past the windows. She said nothing back. She did not need to. He had not said it to get a response. He said it because it was true, and he said true things plainly, and she was beginning to understand that this was perhaps one of the most radical things a person could do. They stopped at a light. She looked at his hands on the wheel, the quiet confidence of them, and she thought about the dark cars and the phone calls and the name that returned nothing from a search engine. She thought about all of it, and she made no decisions about any of it right then. She just sat in the car in the Monday morning city with the feeling of being seen clearly by someone who was also, she understood, partially unseen to her. She decided to be honest with herself about that. To hold both things at once without making either one smaller. The light changed. They kept driving. 2 months passed. Then a third. She moved fully into her own apartment, properly hers now, and she learned the sounds of it at night, and how the light came in through the kitchen window in the morning, and she liked it, liked the solitude of it in the way that feels earned rather than imposed. Remy was present without being constant, which was its own kind of language she had to learn to read. He did not fill every evening or require her weekends. He appeared when he said he would and never when he said he would not. He texted at unexpected hours, not the frantic texting of someone seeking reassurance, but observations, something he had read, something he had seen on the street that made him think of something she had said. She found herself thinking about him during the day, in a way that was different from how she had thought about Daniel. With Daniel, she had thought about tasks and logistics. With Remy, she thought about things she wanted to say to him later. There was a difference in that, and she understood it. She also noticed more. The reading glasses appeared around the 6-week mark. He took them off quickly when he realized she had seen them, and she saw his hand move to remove them, and she said, "Don't," and he stilled, and she went back to reading what she was reading, and said nothing more about it. He left them on. He never mentioned it. He knew her mother's birthday because she had mentioned it once, between bites of food in a conversation that had been about 3 other things. She had mentioned it in passing and moved on. He had called her mother on that morning, said he was a friend of her daughter's, wished her a happy birthday. Her mother had called Nadia an hour later, equal parts thrilled and full of questions. Nadia had not known how to explain him. This was the thing that sat at the edge of everything good. She still did not have a complete picture. The security detail she was now certain existed. She had learned to identify the cars, the specific men who occupied certain positions without being obvious about it. The conversations that stopped when she appeared, not stopped in guilt, stopped in the way that information gets quieted around people who are not its intended audience. Once, she had walked into his study in his apartment to bring him coffee, and he had closed his laptop with a speed that was so natural it was almost not a movement at all. And he had looked up at her and smiled, and she had set the coffee down and said nothing, because she understood something without being told it. There were rooms in his life with closed doors. She was not being deceived. She knew this in the way you know things without being given proof, the accumulated evidence of his consistency, his honesty about what he would and would not say, the fact that he never lied to her. He simply did not always answer. There was a difference, and she knew it. But knowing the difference did not mean the closed doors were not there. She had a friend named Claire who worked in city administration and knew things the way people in city administration always know things, a broad and textured knowledge of which names mattered, and which neighborhoods were managed by people who did not carry business cards. Claire took her to lunch on a Tuesday and said very carefully, over soup, "I've heard his name. Nadia." Nadia set her spoon down. "In what context?" she said. "The kind of context," Claire said. "That means he has influence over things that are not supposed to be influenced." They sat with that. "Is he dangerous?" Nadia asked. Claire thought about this with what looked like genuine effort. "Not to you," she said. "Everything I've heard suggests he is very precise about who and what he applies himself to. But the world he operates in is not safe." Nadia picked her spoon back up. "I know that," she said. "I know you know," Claire said. "I just wanted to say it out loud because I love you, and someone should." They finished their soup. Nadia drove home afterward, and sat in the parking garage for 8 minutes before going upstairs. She thought about safe. She thought about 3 years of perfectly safe, the quiet, well-maintained safety of a life with a man who remembered her dentist appointments, and had never once made her feel like she was standing in the sun. She thought about the gas station bathroom mirror, and the flickering light, and the lipstick she'd had no energy for. She thought about Remy saying she was not too much. She thought about the reading glasses. She went upstairs. She saw him that Friday. They cooked in her kitchen, which had become a thing they did on Fridays when he was available, because he had once mentioned that he rarely cooked for himself, and she had said she needed someone to eat with, and so it had simply become a fact. She watched him chop vegetables with the efficiency of someone who had learned things in order, and she thought about Claire's lunch, and she thought about what she was going to do with the information. She decided, that night, that she was going to do the thing she should have done earlier. Not ask around, ask him. They were eating when she said it. "I had lunch with someone who knows your name," she said. He looked at her. "In a specific context," she added. He set his fork down. He did not look panicked. He looked at her the way he always looked at her, directly, with the full attention she had learned to expect. "What did they say?" he asked. "That you have influence," she said, "over things that are not supposed to be influenced." Silence. "They said you were precise," she continued, "about what you apply yourself to." He held her gaze. "That's accurate," he said. She nodded. "I need to understand," she said, "what that means for you, what it costs you, what it looks like on a regular Thursday." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to talk. Not everything. She understood, as he spoke, that there were walls inside what he was saying, shapes that were being indicated without being fully outlined. But he told her more than she had expected, and he told her in the same way he told her everything, without softening it past recognition. He told her there were decisions he made that were not clean, that his world had rules that were not the same as other rules, and that the structure of it had responsibilities he could not step out of, and had not tried to, that the men outside in the cars were not decorative. He told her that she was the only person outside of his world who knew what she now knew, and that this meant something specific and serious, and that he was aware of what he was asking by being with her. She listened until he was finished. "Why me?" she asked. He looked at her. "Because you're honest," he said. "Because you saw the edges of what I was, and you asked me directly to my face, and you weren't performing when you did it. Because you're the most real person I've been near in a very long time." She sat with this. The food had gone cold. Neither of them moved to reheat it. "I'm not easy to walk away from," he said. "I need you to understand that. Not because I would stop you. I would never stop you. But once you're in this, the world I'm in knows you exist. That's already true. I wanted to make sure you understood that." She looked at him across the table. The reading glasses were folded beside his plate, where he had set them earlier. "I understand," she said. She reached across the table and picked up her fork. They finished dinner. Outside, the cars were where they always were. She had stopped being unnerved by them. She was not sure whether this was wisdom or something else. She suspected it was both, and she suspected that holding two things at once was going to be a permanent feature of whatever this was, and she was finding, slowly, that she could do it. She could hold two things at once. She was more than she had let herself be for a very long time, and she was learning, slowly and imperfectly and with both eyes open, what more actually felt like. The phone call came on a Tuesday, at 7:14 in the morning. She was in his apartment. This had become occasional, staying over, comfortable in the way that things settle when they are real rather than performed. She was in his kitchen making coffee, and he was in the shower and his phone was on the counter. She was not looking at it. She was measuring coffee grounds. It rang. The screen lit up with no name, just a number, and she would have let it ring, except that it rang again immediately, which is the universal signal for something urgent, and she reached for it the way you do when you are half awake and not thinking. She answered it. Silence for a half second. Then a voice, low, male, speaking 3 short sentences before the call ended. She stood in the kitchen with the phone in her hand. The coffee maker beeped. She heard the shower turn off. She replayed the 3 sentences. She could not unknow them. They were in her now, those 3 sentences, with the specific weight of things that are not meant for you, but have reached you anyway. The sentences told her two things. They told her that whatever Remy managed, it was being directly challenged by someone with enough confidence to call his personal number at 7 in the morning. And they told her, in the language of the words used and the tone they were delivered in, that the situation was not abstract. Remy came into the kitchen. He read her face. He read it in less than a second. His eyes went to his phone in her hand. "I answered it," she said. "I'm sorry." It rang twice fast. He took the phone from her. He looked at the screen. Something moved across his face. Not fear. She had never seen fear on him, but a recalibration, the specific rearrangement of a man moving into a different mode. He looked at her. What did they say? His voice was even. She told him the three sentences exactly as she had heard them, word for word, the way she repeated things when she needed to be precise. He was very still. "Okay," he said. He moved to the window and stood with his back to her, already making a call. She poured 2 cups of coffee. She put his on the counter where he could reach it. She took hers to the kitchen table and sat down and wrapped both hands around the mug and looked out the window at the city waking up. She was not panicking. This surprised her, or would have if she had time to examine it. She was very still inside, the way you get when something big is happening and there is nothing to do with your hands about it yet. Remy finished his call, made another, finished that one. He came to the table and sat down across from her. He picked up his coffee. He looked at her over the rim. "You're not going to work today," he said. "What's happening?" she asked. He told her enough to understand the shape, not all of it. The shape was enough. Someone who had a history with him and his operation had decided to escalate something that had been manageable until now. The call had been a message rather than a mistake. The message had reached her by accident, and she was therefore now attached to something she had previously been kept away from. "Am I in danger?" she asked. Not dramatically, practically. "Not this morning," he said. "My people are already moving, but I need you somewhere other than here today." She thought about her office, her desk, her inbox, the project meeting she had at 10. She thought about the 3 sentences in the man's voice. "Where?" she said. He named a location. "A family friend," he said. "A woman named Eleanor, older, lived in the East Quarter. Safe as anywhere in the city could be described as safe right now." Nadia nodded. "I need an hour," she said. "I need to call my office." He nodded. She made the call, said she was unwell, said she was sorry. She was not the kind of person who called in sick without cause, and her manager said feel better and get some rest. And that was that. Remy drove her to Eleanor's building himself. He did not use the regular car. The car they took, she noticed, had no visible plates from the position she was sitting in, and he drove a route that was not the logical route, doubling twice, pausing at a light long enough to check something in his mirror. She said nothing during the drive. At Eleanor's building, he stopped. He looked at her. "I'm going to fix this," he said. "I know," she said. She did know. She knew it the way she knew things about him now, not from proof, but from the accumulated weight of evidence, who he was in small moments, who he was in big ones. "Go," she said. He looked at her for a moment longer. Then he drove. Eleanor was a small woman in her late 60s, with an apartment full of plants and an ability to read a situation without needing it explained. She opened the door, looked at Nadia, said, "Come in, I'll make tea," and asked no questions. Nadia sat at Eleanor's kitchen table that day and watched the city out the window and thought. She did not think about leaving. The thought came, and she examined it, and she noted what she felt when she held it. And what she felt was not relief or safety. What she felt was subtraction. The removal of something that had changed the quality of her days and her sense of herself within them. She thought about Remy giving her a choice. He had done it in the kitchen before they left. In the space of a look that lasted less than a second but said everything. He would not keep her. She understood this. The choice, as it had always been, was hers. She thought about the woman she had been in that gas station bathroom. She thought about how small she had made herself to fit inside a life that was stable and safe, and had been slowly, quietly starving her. She thought about a stranger at a party who said one honest word. She was not the same woman. She was larger than that now, fuller, more present to herself, and the size of what she had become in these months was not separate from Remy. It was related to him, to being seen clearly, to being told the truth, to being in proximity to someone who operated in the world at full capacity and expected the same of her. She could walk away. He would make sure she was safe. He had told her that. She thought about walking away from the reading glasses, from the Friday evenings in the kitchen, from the text at 11 at night with a sentence about something he had read that she needed to immediately know. From the way he said her name. Eleanor brought the tea. They sat together in the plants and light apartment and drank it quietly. "He's a good man," Eleanor said eventually, simply. "I know," Nadia said. "Good men have complicated lives," Eleanor said. "That's not a coincidence." Nadia turned her cup in her hands. "I know that too," she said. Eleanor nodded and said nothing else. By evening, things had resolved to a degree Remy judged sufficient. He called her. His voice was level, the particular flatness of a man who had done what needed doing and was now standing on the other side of it. "You can go home," he said. "I'm sending someone to drive you." "Are you all right?" she asked. A brief pause. "Yes," he said. She waited for more. He did not offer more, and she understood that this too was part of it. The closed doors, the rooms she would not always be permitted to enter fully, and she held this alongside the reading glasses, and the birthday call, and the hour at a kitchen table being honest about his life, and she held all of it together. "Come over when you're done," she said. "I'll cook." Another pause, shorter. "Give me 2 hours," he said. "Take 3, she said. "I'm making that pasta you like and it takes time." He arrived in 2.5 hours. He had a bruise above his left eye that had not been there in the morning. He did not explain it. She looked at it once, then handed him a glass of water, and turned back to the stove. He sat at her kitchen table. She cooked. They ate. After dinner they sat on the sofa and she leaned against him, and they watched something neither of them fully paid attention to, and the city moved outside the window, and after a long time he said, quietly, not looking away from the screen, "Thank you." She did not ask for what. She knew for what. She stayed where she was. The next morning was ordinary. Coffee. Light in the kitchen window. His glasses on the counter because he had been reading before she woke up. She picked them up and set them closer to him. He looked up. She went to get dressed for work. She had a project meeting at 10. She had a life to go to. She understood now with a clarity she had not had before any of this, a self that was showing up fully to both of those things in a way she had not managed for a long time. This was what she had chosen. Not a man with all the answers. Not safety in the clean, uncomplicated sense. Not a life that could be Googled. She had chosen the version of herself that was awake. She found it in a gas station bathroom mirror on a night she was dreading a party, and she had been growing toward it ever since. And she was not finished yet, and it was real. She put on her coat. She picked up her bag. Remy was still at the kitchen table, reading glasses on, mug in hand, looking at something on the counter with the particular focus of a man working through a problem. She stopped in the doorway. He did not look up. He did not need to. He knew she was there. This was the whole story, in that moment. No grand declaration, no cinematic close. Just a man at a kitchen table, and a woman in a doorway, and the particular quiet of a morning that belonged to both of them. She said nothing. She left for work. She was smiling by the time she reached the street.